I want to just change the mindset. It's not glamorous. It's no other option. That's what VC is. So often the idea of bootstrap versus VC money, it's a false choice. Bootstrap, somebody else will take the VC money and, they'll overtake you.
Welcome to the Powerhouse. My name is Joshua Gonzalez, but you can call me JG. Each episode, I sit down with a leader here in New York City to unpack one real decision under pressure. What the stakes were, what the trade-offs they faced, what they chose, and the values behind it. Then we publish a short written breakdown in the Powerhouse newsletter on LinkedIn. So the lesson is easy to share, easy to remember, and useful. So if you ever had to make a hard call with imperfect information, this is for you. Let's get it started. Let's welcome our guest, Andrew Ackerman. Welcome, Andrew.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, Andrew, thank you for being here. Tell us one fork in the road and what was at stake?
So mid-career for me, right? I've gone from being a startup guy with two startups and at this point, two startups and, a little bit of angel investing. And I had a couple of years prior joined a company called Dreamit Ventures, which is the third oldest accelerator in the world. And at the time, one of the top 5 programs out there. So for anyone in your audience that's not familiar with the accelerator model, what you did at that point is you would find companies that were pre-revenue, not quite ready to raise, but like diamonds in the rough. You bring them into the program, you have them sit their butts down for 3 months, a speaker, pizza, beer, and then demo day, and they'd raise their round, right? You work intensively with them and get them to the point where they are ready to raise. And then, you've invested in them and hopefully they do very well. So Dreamit had gotten to the point where they're one of the top accelerators by any way you measure it. But we were top 5. We weren't number 1 or number 2. And we had a new CEO who came in, and at our offsite, he says, listen, I don't like being top 5. I want to be number 1. Can we be number 1 in this space? And there were some awkward silences because we'd been trying really hard. And like the big guys out there, like Y Combinator, Techstars, like they had a lot more resources. And like, we just didn't think we could ever do it. So I said, listen, I don't think we can do it, was kind of the consensus. And he's like, great. That's what I thought. If we can't be number 1 here, where can we be number 1? All of a sudden we started thinking about, well, if we weren't doing exactly the kind of program that we'd done, how would we change it? And this was very hard for us because Techstars and Dreamit were the ones that came up with this model. So this was kind of our gift to the world that now, hundreds, if not 1,000, 2,000 accelerators were copying. And now we were saying, do we throw that all out and come up with a new model where we could be number 1, or do we keep kind of pushing forward and try to inch our way up through the rankings?
Awesome. And what were the options in front of you?
Well, just keep doing what you're doing and try to do it better is always an option. Occasionally that's the right answer, but it's a little bit like, it's like you're in a race and there's a lot of cars in front of you and you're really just jockeying and just get the right combination of circumstances to cut one off and then move ahead in the position. We've been doing that for a while. So in our context, we started thinking about well, what would be different that we haven't done? And what we started with was, what were opportunities we felt like were being left on the table? Or what were things that didn't work? Because that's where these kind of new ideas come from. So we had a lot of companies that were slightly later stage than the companies we were dealing with. Visualize a company that's raised $2-3 million, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less. I was already doing revenue, $100,000, $400,000 in revenue. They would come to us and say, listen, Andrew, I love what you guys are doing at Dreamit. I really love the fact that you're great at making introductions to potential customers, but we're a little beyond where you normally recruit. We can't take the entire team, tell them to drop everything and go sit in a room for 3 months. And we can't give you the 7% or the 6% that you want for the program because we're beyond that stage. Right. And even if we wanted to, our investors wouldn't let us do that. How can we work with you? And up until that point, the answer had been you can't. Sorry. And then on the other hand, when we were introducing all our earlier startups to the corporations that would ultimately partner with them, we got a lot of this. We got, wow, Andrew, that's a very cool startup, right? Great team, super painful point. I love their solution, but they're just a little too early to work with a Fortune 500 company, Fortune 100 company. So we're going to watch them for another 6 to 12 months, but if all goes well, we'll partner with them then. So we're sitting at this offsite saying, where can we be? And then we realize, wait a second, the corporates are telling us, even though they say, bring us cutting edge stuff, what they really mean is bring us stuff that's a little bit tested. So they want stuff that's a year later. And then we have the companies that are a year later and they want to work with us. We have supply, we have demand. The only thing that's getting in the way is the program we run and how we price it. So let's fix all of that.
Mhm.
So the other option was go later stage, rip everything up, rebuild a program that made sense for those two constituents.
Interesting. And how did you choose?
So we ultimately went for the new op model. Otherwise, I guess we wouldn't be here today. But we tried to have it a little bit both ways. So we had a separate vertical for health tech that had been around for a while. It was kind of the crown jewel at that time, that point. So the CEO was like, listen, we're not touching that. But Andrew, you haven't started a new program yet. We're going to try something different on your dime. And by the way, tell me how it works. I've never built this before. I'm like, well, that's kind of interesting. So we ended up spinning up a program, an ed tech program, and we split the difference. We had 10 companies. 5 were traditional earlier stage pre-revenue like we'd always done, and 5 were the later stage companies. And what we were doing was we were making sure that A, we had 5 early stage. We knew they could service them. We could service them. And we had 5 of the new types, the later stage, and we wanted to make sure that what we thought we could do for them, we actually could deliver.
And what did it cost you guys to execute that type of shift in your business?
Yeah, well, I mean, the truth is that like we're not a puppy mill. We were not a puppy mill. So we would I would personally do 1 cycle a year. So this meant I wasn't doing the cycle the way I'd done it before. I was taking a chance on this new kind of program. So for me personally, like that was it. If it didn't work, I lost a year. I lost a whole batch of startups that, were my book of business. And for Dreamit as a whole, we were always a lean organization. There aren't that many programs. I think we were active at that point in 4 cities. And one of them was health, so we weren't touching them on purpose. So we're really like, that's one of the 3 torpedoes we had in the water at any one point in time was going to be this experiment. That's
Right.
kind of a big bet. You're betting a third of the company basically on a new direction.
And through that experience, what did you learn?
We learned that we learned that was awesome. Like going from like a crowded racetrack where you're just trying to get in front of cars to like a totally open lane and there's no one there. It's like night and day. So we ended up very quickly punching above our weight in the industries we'd gone into. Because, sorry, I should have said this. If you're trying to hang your hat on business development, it's a lot easier to do that when all the companies are in the same industry than when they're in 12 different industries. So, we launched up the ed tech and then ultimately prop tech and construction tech. And we very quickly became kind of relatively big fish in those growing or emerging small ponds because no one else was doing it. Certainly not doing it the way we did. So when you do find that kind of virgin territory or that open road ahead, you feel it right away. Like you realize like this is the way to do it.
And what are the principles that you lead with now, having that experience?
So, I always tell people you want to zig when other people zag. Right?
Ah,
If everyone is doing one thing, like, okay, there may be a very good reason to do that, but if you do something different, you're going to stand out. Now,
mhm.
hopefully you stand out in a good way. You're not like, oh, that moron. But again, it's everything from like big things to little things. So if everyone is sending a thank you email after an interview, go write your letter old school, right? Nobody gets letters anymore. That'll stand out, right? If everyone in the industry is doing pricing their product a certain way, maybe you price it a different way, see if that works, right? It'll stand out. If everyone's charging one segment, maybe you try a different segment. But it's always roll that back. It's not always better to do it.
Right.
But the biggest opportunities will come from testing things that the rest of the market isn't. Otherwise, you're just going to be part of the pack.
This is an interesting story. I'll let you take the floor.
Sure. So again, if you want to go a little deeper on the accelerator program, the things that we had to think about were this. Number one, we were going from pre-revenue teams every 2, 3, maybe 4 founders. Now we had companies that were going concerns. They had 10, sometimes 20 people. And they had customers they had to serve. So like having them come and sit in a room for 3 months was a non-starter. And having the whole team be involved, also not efficient. So it ended up being a program that was very one-on-one with the founders themselves, maybe 2 co-founders. And it was about 60 to 70% remote even before COVID. And mixed with that, we had a couple of in-person events, which we called sprints. So in the middle of the program, the way we actually help these companies get customers is we would make these face-to-face, one-on-one curated introductions rather than a big event, just one-on-one, sit down at the table with the customers that chose that startup to talk to. So a qualified lead. So we did 2 weeks in a bunch of different cities of those. And at the end of the program, again, these are companies that are going to raise a Series A, not a seed round. So again, a series of curated sit down one-on-one with that stage of investor. So we went from sit your butt in the chair, speaker, pizza, and beer, to mostly remote, 2 tent pole events in the middle and the end, and it being curated one-on-one rather than on stage and for a bunch of people. So programmatically, those were the big changes.
And what were the people saying around you? Were they doubting you that you guys were able to execute? Was it a waste of time for them, or they were fully supportive in this type of pivot?
Well, listen, everybody in the program was like, "Great, let's try this." Right? I mean, we were all ex-founders, so like you do it once, it worked. You do it a second time, you get better at it. You do a third time, you start to get a little bored. So the idea that we're like, "Oh, we're going to try something different," like that was great. Like it was, we were nervous, but it was great. On the outside, I don't think anyone was really paying that much attention. Right? If I ever looked at it, like they're going up, so they're not competing with us for startups at this point. I guess that's good, right? In fact, I would occasionally call up other programs. I said, "Listen, I got a really interesting company. I'm not a generalist anymore. This is not a sector I'm in, and I'm not doing the pre-seed anymore. But I think they're a really strong company. Would you like to talk to them?" And they're like, that was almost like, I'm trying to think of a good example. It's almost like Ford sending a customer over to like Chevy. But then it actually turned around because like once companies came out of their program, they'd raise rounds, but then once they understood what we were doing, they realized what these guys are doing actually helps our portfolio companies go to that next step beyond where we can help them. What had become like we're competing for great startups type of relationship became more of a referral back and forth. If they were too early for me, I would gladly refer them to the right program. And then the programs would refer to me their best graduates. It's like, great, they came out, we got them to the seed round. We want you to get them customers and get them to the A round.
Wow. So instead of directly competing with people, now it feels like it became an established referral partner, right?
Yeah.
There are a lot of emerging leaders who ask the question, I make a mistake in my decision, and culturally they feel that they won't have another shot.
Listen, like if that's the way you feel, like this isn't the world for you. Like startups make a ton of mistakes. My first startup, I made tons of mistakes. The main difference was that none of the mistakes I made killed the company. Right. So most of those mistakes don't matter. If you're able to like test things first, make small bets early on, you made a mistake, you lost a little money, you lost a little time, move on, no problem. And on the bigger level, like let's say you're a founder and your first startup doesn't work out, you're young. Hey, corporations love people who tried the startups. They love people with that kind of initiative. If anything, it might even be a plus. I mean, it's different when you're like 50, but if you're like 25 or 30 and your startup doesn't work and you're going back into the workforce, like what have you been doing for the past 3 years? Well, I tried to build this, I got this far, I was able to sell it. I didn't make a ton of money on it, but got my investors whole. For the guy on the other side of the table, like, yeah, this is a go-getter. Like, I want this person over the other people who have taken no chances or shown no, willingness to innovate. So I would tell people, like, don't worry about it. Again, if you're at the right phase in your life, take those chances. Like, you don't do it if, you are the sole earner and you've got kids in private school or college and you can't go without healthcare. Okay, right? That's not the time in your life to do it. I mean, it's not to get a little ahead of ourselves, but like part of the reason I wrote my book as a novel rather than a how-to guide is I want would-be founders to get an actual feel for what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Like what's nerve-wracking about it? What's all-consuming about it? And to think through like, maybe I have the temperament for it, but maybe it's the wrong time. Or maybe I don't have the temperament for it, and that's okay. I shouldn't do the startup. Like these are things you should think of. But generally speaking, I would say the cost of failure or the cost of mistakes are usually a lot lower than you think.
That's a good reframing of the risk, really. Like, what's really the downside? If your kids are going to get thrown out of the house, probably that's a big downside. But if it's just you and you can eat instant ramen,
Couch as an alternative if things go really bad. Yeah.
let's dig deeper now. You said you wrote a book. Who's this book dedicated to? Are these for new founders? Who should read this book?
Yeah. Exactly. Everybody and their mothers.
And
I'm thinking about the mothers part. So, okay, here's the kind of the audience. If you're doing a startup right now, you should go out and buy the book. I would say this even if it weren't my book. I'd say go buy the book, go somewhere, read it for the next 5 hours. Because it's literally everything from there's a fictional startup, everything from the idea all the way through to when they raise their first round of financing. You learn from that rather than from your own mistakes. It will guarantee you immediately you'll come out, oh, I can do this differently, right? It'll immediately increase your odds of success. The other targets are people who are thinking about it. Like they're working somewhere, they're in a cubicle, they're in an office. They're banging their head against this problem. There's gotta be a better way. It occurs to them, oh, wait, if I did it this way, that would solve the problem. I bet there's a lot of other people like me that have that problem. Should I quit my job and build that? like for you guys, before you do that, read the book. A, you won't make a lot of mistakes, hopefully. And B, at least you'll understand what it's like. Cause like the biopics about, the Facebook founding, that's not what startup life is like. Right.
It's
That's
not the glam of the movies.
no glamour, right? There's a lot of, I built my own desks when I was in a startup. I don't mean from like IKEA, I mean from lumber, right? I had like, the splinters on my hands for like months afterwards because I was too like in a rush to sand it down properly. So like for the people who are thinking about leaving their job and starting a startup, also for you, I tell you, I mentioned that I teach an entrepreneurship course. I use it as a textbook in the entrepreneurship course. So if you're a student thinking about it, if you're a professor who's like, I don't know why it is, but for such an interesting topic, the textbooks are boring as well.
Right.
Literally everybody and their mothers.
There are a lot of people these days, they say, oh, we don't want to go to the venture route. You don't want to bootstrap. Or some people are very hardcore, like the only way to scale is through other people's money. How do you weigh that type of decision?
Listen, I talk about this a lot in my course, and I talk about this a lot on some of the other podcasts that I've done. Tech startups are a weird corner of the entire startup world. Right. So these traditional small business startups, for lack of a better phrase, like I'm quitting my day job, I'm going to become an independent consultant. Or I'm going to go out and buy the corner dry cleaner. I can do better than them, right? Or I'm going to invent a hairbrush as a built-in mister. By the way, that's one of my students who's literally working on that as we speak. Like those are all traditional like business startups. They are startups. And if you're doing that, you got a lot of options because banks understand that, right? You could go out there and go to the bank and say, "Listen, I'm buying the equipment for a car wash. Will you well, it doesn't work. They can take the equipment or a dry cleaner or what have you. If you're a consultant and you're getting started, you can probably grow out of revenue because you just got to cover your own nut for a little bit, and then you got clients coming in, right? You can do all these things, but tech startups can't do any of that because a tech startup, it's a new model. The bank has no idea how to underwrite it. It's often like no actual tangible assets, so they won't touch it because there's nothing to secure it. And it's going to be a year or two before you start generating any revenue. So you're not growing out of revenue. So what's left for this like weird little corner of the startup world called tech startups is angel and VC money, right? We're the only other people who give you that. And you have to give us a piece of your soul. You have to give me stock of your company to get the money from me. I mean, we are in some ways worse than hard money lenders. So we're the least worst alternative for a type of startup that has no other alternative. Uh, So then it's really in that case, you're talking, well, it's either I bootstrap or I take, money from angel or VC. And I'm being a little harsh. I mean, we add a lot of value, of course. I believe we do. But when you think about it, I want to just change the mindset. It's not glamorous. It's no other option. That's what VC is. So when you're thinking, do I bootstrap or do I take the money from the VC? It's often a false choice. Because if you're building a startup that is truly cutting edge and that there is a good answer to the question, why now? You don't have the option of going slow. And by the way, if there's no answer to why now, you're probably building the wrong startup. People are ahead of you or it failed a zillion times before. But if it's legit, like, hey, we couldn't build this 3 years ago because this kind of like plug and play AI solutions wasn't available, right? Great. If you go slow, other people will take the VC money and they'll leapfrog you. So often the idea of bootstrap versus VC money, it's a false choice. Bootstrap, somebody else will take the VC money and, they'll overtake you. So almost always, if you are the kind of tech startup that should be VC funded, the answer is to take the VC funding.
I want to increase the decision-making skills of people starting their own thing or being a co-founder. What are the good questions to ask themselves and how to think about it?
You mean, should I become a founder?
Yes.
Okay. If you're asking yourself that, the answer is probably maybe not. Right. If you're that kind of crazy, the idea that you would go your entire life and have not tried this should eat away at your soul to the point where you've just got to do it. Now I'm exaggerating a little bit, but like this is a kind of journey where, if you're not sure, it's probably not for you. Right. And if you know, you know. But I'll give you a little bit more to go by there. Right. So if you are, again, at that point in your life where the realistic cost of failure is not your like overblown, like, oh, everyone's going to hate me and I'll have like a big F on my forehead. But like the realistic costs of failure are like, very disruptive to your life. Like I got to sell the house. I got to pull my kids out of school. I got to go like shuffle through garbage cans for recyclables. I don't know. If that's the point in your life you're at, then you can't do it. Right. It's just, there's lots of things I can't do. Like, I found out when I was younger, I'm too big to be a jockey. That was a soul crushing revelation for a 9-year-old. but there's certain things you just can't do. And it's not you, it's your circumstances. Then there's the mentality, right? Are you comfortable with this kind of risk? If you've only worked at large companies, you're used to having a support system around you and you're so used to it, you probably don't even know it's there. But the moment you go to a startup, you realize, well, we're out of coffee because nobody orders coffee if it's not me, right? I have to do my own schedule. I have to like make new copies of the keys to give to like new employees. Like all these things that you just don't think about at a large company, that's you, right? And some people, that's not for them, right? It's just not. They like, I'm a super specialist, right? I'm a sharpshooter. I come in and I just do this thing and I do it awesome. And I can't stomach the fact that 80% of the time I'm just doing everything else that has to get done because no one else will do it otherwise. Then hey, it's not for you, and that's okay. No harm, no foul. But that's the kind of mental, personal calculus you have to do to decide if like you want to take the plunge. And if you do, welcome to the club. We're all crazy in here.
Join the back club.
Welcome to the insane asylum.
Interesting how you explain that type of reality. Sometimes the worst case in your head is more emotional than the real effect of the failure. It might not be as bad as it is outcome wise.
Highs are highs and the lows are lows. There's times where like you think I'm so close to a breakthrough, and for all you know, there's like miles of rock in front of you. And there's times you're like, I'm ready to like, turn it in. And it turns out like, you're a week away from like a decision from a big customer. And you just don't know. So you have to be comfortable with that level of uncertainty.
The pace in this crazy startup world where everyone's rushing, there's the urgency is always the deadline was yesterday mentality. Can you take us through that culture?
Listen, it's like jalapenos. You love them or you hate them, right? If you hate them, they're not for you. This any startup, I have yet to be at a startup that was over-resourced or appropriately resourced. I've seen a few of them. They actually tend to fail, but most startups are woefully under-resourced compared to what they want to do. They have a dev list like, this wide, and they've got like the capacity that's this narrow. So it forces them to really call their shot. I want to build these 8 features. I can only build one because I only have this many people on my dev team. I have this much money. Which one is the best use of my time? Which one's going to get me the most new sales? And that's actually a good discipline to have in a lot of cases, but it's also kind of frustrating. Like, oh my God, if I just had a little bit more, I could build the second feature, the third feature. There's a lot of that. And because you're so under-resourced, how do you increase your number of resources? You just work more. I have 8 hours a day in corporate. I have 16 hours a day when it's my startup.
Right.
A lot of that you're on all the time. There's no one else to do it. You don't have no one else to lean on, so you just got to do that stuff. Right? You're wearing multiple hats. But on the other hand, you have this other kind of liberty to you. It's like if I want to do something, I just do it. I can sit down, I can do the analysis. I'm like, wow, it's directionally correct. This is a huge opportunity. That's awesome. I'm going to do it. I just start doing it. In large corporate, they're like, okay, I think we're right. They do a presentation to my boss. My boss has to bring his boss on. Boss will say, well, like, I know it's directionally correct, but is it a 5Xer or a 5.5Xer? Okay, go back, spend 3 weeks resourcing it, right? So all that part of my language bullshit, the layers and the prep and the things that just slow you down, like that make you feel like you're wearing a weighted vest when you're trying to run a marathon. None of that in the startup world. Now, you need to run twice as fast as anyone else because it's just you, but it's kind of liberating not to have that overhead on top of you. And for someone who's had a successful startup, even just a moderately successful startup, being in control of their destiny like that can ruin you for corporate work, for real work.
Yeah.
It's really hard to go back and put the lead vest back on.
Right.
Know how fast you can run without it.
My experience, because all my years in New York, I always worked on startups, and it's almost like everything is DIY. Make it work. No one's gonna give you the exact instruction. Just figure it out.
So I'll tell you, actually, I started to work that into my class. So I do 2 things to prep the class for what I want to talk about. One is I assign chapters for my book, right? And the reason is it's a story. It's a little bit more interesting. It kind of introduces the concept and it gives them like a good chunk of it. But then I also tell them, listen, we're going to talk about total addressable market. Like I hate to win and not make money. And that's what happens when the total addressable market is too small. I want you to go on ChatGPT or Gemini or the AI tool of your thought, your choice, and ask it. You create the prompt and ask it, like, how should I think about a market size for my startup? How do I calculate it? What do I need to think about? You write the prompt. And then I have them submit the prompt. the response to the prompt, and what they think about it, what they agree with, disagree with, what surprised them. And that's what the real world is like. And I'd say even regular work, right? More and more, you don't want a great employee is not one that says, awesome, how do I do that? It's like, okay, this needs to be done. I'll go figure out how to do it. And what's great in corporate that way is not just great, but necessary in the startup world because you often don't have anyone to go to for that. You have to teach yourself how to do it. You have to create the new ways of doing it. So I want to start with my class. I want to start them down that path of first, you think about it. First, you try to teach yourself. Then we come in and we'll discuss it together.
There's a huge value here, especially with the improvement of AI as thinking partners, as someone that could really challenge you. What are like I would say the highest Pareto return on time spent on AI?
You got to get better at the prompts, right? There are a couple of tips on the prompts, and I'm not super at this. I'm at the intermediate level. But for a lot of it, you had to give them the context and you break it up into small pieces. Like you start a first one, like, hey, I'm the founder of a startup. We do X, Y, Z. Here's our website, right? Can you tell me what in your own words, ChatGPT, what do we do? Boom, like great, it understands what you're doing. Awesome. I'm, putting together a pitch deck to raise my series, whatever seed, and I want to know how to calculate my total addressable market. How should I do that? Now you've given it a lot of. You could say that, or you could say also like, hey, give me a couple of examples, right? Give me a couple of examples, different type of startups that do it.
Well, how much on a personal level? How much do you use these tools?
So
Are you a cloud code person or?
I've done one kind of vibe coding project before Lovable came out. And it was brutally hard and moderately successful. And I want to do it again. The way I approach AI is it's like learning another language. Like I speak search engine. I want to speak prompt. So if you want to learn another language, you have to immerse yourself in it. You have to force yourself to do things that way, including talking to people who very well know English because they know it better than we do sometimes. But you need to force yourself to speak their language so that you get good at it. So I've done a whole lot of things that I know I can do well and quickly the way I do now, but I've forced myself to do it the other way just to see how far I can push it in ChatGPT or in other tools. So I'll give you two quick examples, right?
Sure.
I'm doing an SPV, a special purpose vehicle to invest in a startup that does, of all things, robots that clean trash chutes. Great company. So I went to put together my investment memo. So I could sit down, I could write my memo, take about 20, 30 minutes. I said, you know what? I have 7 or 8 of my memos. I've got the data room. Let's create a project in ChatGPT. I'm like, hey, ChatGPT, here's like 5 memos. Here's my style. Here's going to come up with like a general idea template for what I write in it. Boom, here's the data room. Let me see what you got. It ended up taking me twice as long, but my hope was when I was done tweaking it, I'd get to the point where I could throw it in there and it would give me a first draft that was 90% of the way done instantly. And then I could just add 5 minutes of review on top and then do the memo much faster.
Right.
So I learned how to get good at it, or as good as I am already.
We are now on kind of like the last part of the program. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you for your final remarks for these emerging leaders who just want to make better decisions. And then we'll do a quick fire round about New York and see some of your takes.
Sure.
So take the floor.
Okay. Final remarks is, of course, buy this book. So, and I'm a little bit tongue in cheek about that, but I'm also kind of serious about this. So if you are a startup founder, the things you should be doing right now is how can I de-risk my startup? What can I do to take an assumption and be able to say, okay, I've done the research. This is actually true, right? I think I can advertise for this cost per click. I bought $100 worth of AdWords. Okay, I've proven I can get the clicks for that number. And every time you take an assumption and you prove it, your startup gets that much less risky. And then you can go to the VC and you can say, I've tested everything I can possibly test without the money. Now I need the money. And that's what we want. Because if we go out there and there are some obvious things you could have done before coming to us, like that's not a good look, right? We want people who have done everything they can. So one of the things you could do is you invest 5 hours in reading my book and like you'll miss a whole bunch of mistakes. Like a lot of first time founders, they have this idea and they have the solution. It's like an epiphany, right? Shining light comes out of their temple and they go into a room and they code for 4 months. And then they come out and they bring this to the world. And then it turns out the world says, yeah, I'm not so into that. Or it's like, all of that stuff I don't care about. That one feature's kind of okay, but it's a little confusing. Can you fix it? A good founder tests before they build. So I talk about in the book, the index card app. where you literally sketch out every page or every screen of your app on an index card, as ugly as you want, right? It doesn't not supposed to be real. And then you give it to someone in front of you and say, "This is my app. Touch it, swipe it, do whatever you would do. I want to see how you would interact." And depending on what they do, you give them another card. And if they ask you something, it's like, "Hey, you just downloaded the app. I'm not standing in the room with you. I need to see, I just want to see how you, but please verbalize what you're thinking so I can't read your mind." But you do that. You do that with 20 or 30 potential customers, you will avoid so many blind alleys. Like, you will not build all the features that no one cares about. And if they can't figure out what this feature does and how it works, you'll unearth that problem. And that you can do for the cost of, a pack of like 50 4x6 index cards and a pen. Though you can steal the pen from the bank next door. That's okay. You got to buy
Yeah, that's a lot.
right? For all that, and just to meet with 20 people, you can save yourself 4 months of coding. Like, that's a good deal. Right? So that's the kind of stuff that I recommend to my startups. That's the kind of stuff I put in the book. And that's why I say, like, had I found any place where all this stuff was in the same one place, and even if half of it was in one place, but not boring, like boring as fuck, right? I wouldn't have written my book. So it's
Awesome.
totally self-serving, but it's also totally sincere.
And I do agree, reading some of the reviews from the book, save 6 months, right? Save 6 months, compress the timeline to 5 hours of reading, and apply, apply, apply.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
We
All
could
right,
do
quick fire questions.
Go for it.
Let's go with what neighborhood in New York do you consider your home base and why?
I live on the Upper West Side. It's good. It's family. We do brunch well. I wouldn't come here at a club or party if I were 20, really 20 years younger. But it's good for me for this stage of my life.
Great. Where do you go when you need to think clearly in the city? Maybe no phone, no people.
You want the real answer?
Okay.
The bathroom.
There.
I have 3 teenage girls. 2 still live at home. Like, that's the only place I have any, like, guaranteed not to be interrupted time. It's not really good for long, like, contemplations, but it is the only consistent quiet place. And I'm joking a little bit, but you'll find your quiet times where you do. Here, I'll give you a really funny story. Some of my best startup ideas come to me in the shower, but a lot of to me shower, including the really bad ones. So I have this rule that unless an idea has popped up during a shower, remember, no phone, no pen to write things down, but also no one talking to you, unless it pops up 7 showers, I'm not even touching it. So I have a 7-shower rule on new ideas.
There we go. It's like a 7-touch sequence from your brain to execution.
Well, it has to be that good to come back, right? The ones that just pass and they disappear down with the water in the drain.
What's a local spot that you think deserves more attention?
New York Public Library. And
Ooh.
specifically the reading room, right? So you're bouncing around town, you got a bunch of meetings, and like you got a half hour, you want to do work, you go into the Starbucks, you fight for, an outlet, and you have these little tables. You're in Midtown, right? Right on 42nd Street, right by Bryant Park. You go in there, the reading, it's huge, it's quiet. There's like clusters of outlets on every table. The Wi-Fi is solid. Like, if you need to do work, my God, it's great.
What a hidden spot. If people just heard it, if you heard it here, please don't spread it, okay?
Don't
So we
tell
can keep
anyone.
it
Just your closest friends.
closest friends, definitely. Keep it hush hush. Let's say, what's a New York City mistake you made early that you'd warn newcomers about?
New York City mistake. I mean, don't drive.
Don't drive.
Didn't make
Okay.
me- I knew it.
Don't
I grew
buy a
up in the
car.
area. It's like, if you don't need a car, don't do it. It's a lot easier, right? You don't have to worry about parking for like $700 a month. You don't have to worry about alternate side of the street. People come from, like, I don't know, Cleveland. Not to beat up on Cleveland, but you want to go somewhere. You get in your car, you drive, you find parking, you go to the meeting. Like, it doesn't work that way in New York, right? You get there, and now you're a lot slower than the subway. And when you get there, there's no parking. And when you come back, you've lost your parking spot. So, like, come here, don't bring your car. Just, I know you're skeptical because you've grown up with a car. Just don't bring your car for the first 3 months. Trust me.
Lastly, if New York itself was your mentor, what lessons does it keep forcing you to learn?
I mean, always be aware of your environment, right? Like,
So-
there's things that you can step in. There are things that will crawl over your shoe. There are things that will take your wallet. I'm exaggerating again. But yeah, no, I mean, like, there's a temptation to, like, be there on your phone all the time. New York's always reminding me, like, I have walked Now, in my defense, it was a extraordinarily clean bus station panel. Like the clear plexiglass panel was just sticking out and there was no metal. And I walked into it because I was on my phone, but you just can't do that, right? There's too many people, there's too much stuff going on. So it does take you out of, phone space. And since you're not driving, right, you're walking a lot of places. So New York will do that for you if you want.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much. We got a quick fire questions. Lastly, again, Andrew, tell us more about your book. Where can they find it and how could they connect with you?
Oh, I thought you would never ask. Listen, like, where do you find everything in life? It's on Amazon. It's called The Entrepreneur's Odyssey. It has this really cool, funky cover with the guy in the chainsaw because he's hacking his way through the maze. Yeah, I know there's puns. So if you're like, okay, I've heard this guy talk enough. I don't want to hear anything else about him, but the book's kind of interesting. Just go straight to Amazon. If you're kind of curious and you want a little bit more, my website is Andrew, the letter B as in boy, Ackerman.com. There's a little bit more background on me and, of course, links to the book because that would be stupid not to have.
Awesome. I want to support your book. So if you're one of the first 5 commenters on my newsletter, I will send you a hard copy of the book, right? So I really feel that you'll learn about it. You'll learn a lot. You'll save time. And even this short podcast with Andrew, I got some insights that are like, oh, I wouldn't have learned that without.
I'm going to add something to that. If they tell you about what they're doing, I have these stickers. I call them signed copy stickers. I will sign them. I'll send them to you, and you can put them in the inside cover of the book, so they will have a signed copy.
All right, perfect. All right, thank you, Andrew. It's great speaking with you, and to our audience, thank you for tuning into the Powerhouse, and on to the next episode.
Awesome.
See you.
Thanks for having me.